first like to kick us off here with Steve Hines is going to say a few words before the meeting.
Thank you. I'm just going to open it in prayer. Open this in prayer is what we'd like to do. I'm with Russell First Baptist Church, and just hope that we can all have an open mind this evening and listen to get all the facts straight and go from there, okay? If you will, if you'll bow your head, please. Father, we thank you, God, for this day that you've allowed us, Lord, to be in your presence. We ask, God, that you bring forth, Lord, the words that we need to hear tonight to help us, Lord, to discuss things in a timely manner and in a peaceful manner. Father, we ask that you look down upon us. We ask, God, for your wisdom, for the courage, Lord, to do the things that you would have us to do in your will. We ask, God, that you just walk with us, talk to us, let us be the witness you would have us to be. Forgive us, God, for the times that we fail you, and we'll always look to thee in praise and for glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Steve. All right, we are here from 6 to 8, and also looking forward to spending all that time answering all the questions, and can stay later as well if there are more questions. This is our team from Terawulf. We'll introduce ourselves up here at the front, and we have some other team members as well. And we are here to talk about the Muskie Data Campus, and really appreciate you coming out to learn about it. I don't know if the TV might be a little small for everyone to see, so I have a presentation, but we'll talk through it. And today's topics of discussion. We wanted to talk about who is Terawulf. This is a new entity coming to your area, and I want to introduce ourselves and who the company is and what we do. We want to talk about the project, the Muskie Data Campus, share as much detail as we have and answer questions about it, and then talk about some of the really important topics related to the project, tax revenue and community benefits, jobs and workforce. We want to get into some of the really important topics that have come up in the last few weeks: electricity and ratepayer protections, water usage, noise impacts, and anything else that may come up, and save plenty of time for Q&A. And this is the team that's here today from Terawulf. My name is Pace Rally. I am the VP of Project Development. I'll likely be the face you might see around town as we're getting this project off the ground. And I come from an energy infrastructure background, used to work for utility, built renewables, built ship terminals and ships and various complex things in energy. Joined Terawulf last year, and I'm in town from Wyoming.
Hello, everybody. James Kusurgis. I'm the Senior Vice President of Corporate and Business Development. So I spend a lot of my time with news sites and our customers. I started my career in the U.S. Navy. I'm the number 2 in a family of 7, grew up outside of Philadelphia. I served for 5 years on the USS Michigan, 3 deployments in the Western Pacific. From there, I moved to the world of finance. I worked for a couple hedge funds, and then from there found my way over to Terawulf. I've been with the company for several years now. Very excited to be here. Thank you all for coming, for listening, and for asking your questions. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Enright. I'm also one of 7 children, none of which went to the Naval Academy. James forgets to tell you that I think 4 of his brothers also went to the Naval Academy. None of my brothers and sisters went to the Naval Academy, just to put that out front right now. But I'm very proud of them nonetheless. I'm a Senior Vice President at Terawulf. I've been with the company 17 years. And before that, I spent about 20 years in state and local government in my home state of Maryland. And the company is headquartered in Maryland. And I found at some point in my previous life in government, I met with some of the senior people who are still at Terawulf. We have a lot of senior people that have been with the company for a very long time, but I met them because they were doing interesting things in the energy field, but they were also very much involved in community activities in the Eastern Shore of Maryland and in the state of Maryland, which is not always typical of companies. So I came to know the CEO and some of the senior people. And a few years later, I decided this was something that I was interested in and joined the team. And I also just wanted to say that I think we all up here appreciate that on a beautiful June night, there's probably a lot of other things people would rather do, but this is an important issue for your community. And I think we recognize that, and we appreciate that you're taking the time to come out when I'm sure there's other things you would like to do. So nice to meet you all, and we'll be around afterwards as well to introduce ourselves personally.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katie Doyle. I'm the head of recruitment, development, and engagement at Terawulf. I'm new to the team this year. So my role involves building our team and also being involved in these events and meeting individuals like yourselves, reaching out to the community, and we're all looking forward to answering your questions, providing some more information tonight, and anything else we can help in this process. I am the third of 6 kids, one of which was in the Navy, not in the Naval Academy. I'm the only girl, and I'm very excited to be involved in this work and happy to see some familiar faces after meeting some of you yesterday at our career event. So look forward to continuing the conversation and get started.
Sure. I'll just start by giving a bit of a history of who Terawulf is. Like Mike mentioned, this team's been working together, the same team, for the past several decades. So Terawulf as a company was founded in 2021. That's when we went public. But before then, the team. Sorry. Of course. Is this better? Great. So before, as I was saying, before Terawulf was founded, the team was in the power business. So the team built, owned, operated over 5 gigawatts of power plants, and that was a global business. We got into the business initially in 2021 of Bitcoin mining. We initially, we were in the business of generating electricity. We'd generate for X, we'd sell it for X plus Y, and that's how we made profit. In 2021, we got into Bitcoin mining. A couple of years later, with the rise of OpenAI and some of these other applications, there became a much larger need for infrastructure to support data center activity. So we shifted our focus, and today we're exclusively focused on serving these data center loads. So where are we today? As Mike mentioned, we're headquartered in Eastern Maryland. We've got an office in New York City. That's where I sit. We've got 2 sites in upstate New York. One of our sites is called Lake Mariner Data. It's currently the largest construction project in the state. We've got over 1,000 contractors on that site, and we're up there building out a campus for a company called FluidStack and Google, who I'm sure you all know. We've also got another project in the western part of the state, west of Hawesville. Or sorry, excuse me. I apologize. I'll try to be more clear. Is this better? The PA system. 1 second. Try the other mic. Is this? Test. Is this any better? No? Yeah. All right, I'm going to try to continue. I'll try and project a bit more. Is this any better? Maybe we just come out a little bit. I'll try this. Is this any better? Okay, thank you. Apologize about that. Thanks for letting me know. Still no? An echo. Okay, we're going to have to speak very slowly tonight. Okay. Well, I'll take a quick rewind. Today, we've got a couple locations in upstate New York. Our Lake Mariner data site currently is the largest construction project in the state. The next most is the Buffalo Bills Stadium, actually. So we hire over 1,000 contractors today at that site. We've got over 100 full-time employees at that site. And then we recently entered the state of Kentucky. Our first project in the state of Kentucky is over in Hawesville. That was the former aluminum smelter by Century Aluminum. So in that project, we had a site that used to be the largest aluminum smelter in the country. In the aluminum business, they're very cost of power sensitive. So when the cost of power went up, that business was no longer profitable for them. Had to bring those operations down. So we came into the site and we saw an attractive opportunity to come in on an industrial site, re-leverage that existing infrastructure, which had already been put in place from the smelter, and find a new purpose for it. So we acquired that site several months ago. We've guided, we're a public company, and we've guided the market that we're going to announce who the end user for that project will be. But you'll see construction commence on that project this year. And so one thing, as you're asking all of these questions throughout the night, and you should, we encourage you to, one thing that I would ask you to do is go look at that project. That project is going to be about 1 year ahead. You should ask your friends, anybody who's over there, see what they're hearing, see what they're seeing, ask them what they're thinking. And I would ask you to, really judge us about how we are as a company based on what we're doing over there. I like to think we're doing a pretty good job, but don't take it from me. You should go ask them. We like to come in. We like to be good partners to communities. We want to be good partners because it's good business. We want to come to a place, make sure that we're doing right by our community, by our neighbors, because then we want to grow. Because if we're able to grow, whether it be here or in another part of the state, that's good for us. So that's what we do. We build data centers. So our role in the ecosystem of data centers is to contract the power, identify the land, design the data center, and then we build it for a customer, as an example, somebody like Google. We will then lease that data center to them, typically on a 15+ year initial basis. So when we bring that data center, can you guys still hear? That data center will come with an initial term from that customer of 15 years. Typically what happens though is those customers stay. So there are multiple 5-year renewals after that initial term. So that's what we do. We're very excited to be here. Maybe I'll pass it off. We'll continue with the presentation.
Yeah, James, I was thinking we could talk a little bit about what a data center actually is,
Yeah.
just as a building envelope and
Sure.
what's inside.
Yeah. So, sorry. So what is a data center? So what is it that we're actually building? So what we will build is we're going to build a substation that allows us to connect to the electrical grid. Our responsibility is to deliver the power, the cooling, the security, and to maintain the data center. So we're going to build the connection, the power connections from the grid. We're going to put down a large cement pad. We're going to put up the steel. And then internal to the data center, there's going to be a closed loop water cooling system. I know that's a topic that some of you may have some questions about, and we will get into that. But there will be a water distribution system which distributes the water to the compute racks. Where our responsibility ends is at the rack. So you have, this large building. We've got power to the building. We are delivering the power within the building to the actual compute racks. We're also delivering the cooling to the compute racks. And then we've got a team that provides security for that building. Our responsibility ends at the rack. That's where our customer comes in. Somebody like a Google, an Amazon, a Microsoft. They will then bring all of the computing infrastructure. And the computing infrastructure is what's running things like your phones, your laptops, a number of applications. And I think we'll get into that in another slide.
This is our first one that James mentioned, which is up in New York. And just to give you an aerial view and what's inside, this is very similar. very similar to one, will look a lot like the one we're planning for Project Muskie. Very large warehouse and cooling fans on top, electrical equipment around. So this is our first one that we're building up in New York. So the Muskie Data Campus Project is based on the power that we are working with Kentucky Power to receive, and it's 1,000 megawatts brought into East Park Industrial Park. And I think many of you know the history of the site. Originally a strip mine for coal, and there was the planned Brady aluminum project, which I know was a loss when it didn't materialize. Our plans are to reuse that exact same site where Brady was going to. They had designed their building, and the buildings. I'll show you the site layout in a second, but is going to be pretty much at the same location that Brady aluminum site was going to be. Using very modern design and it's the cleanest infrastructure we can use. There will be a building with, unlike an aluminum facility, no fumes, no chemicals, no greenhouse gas emissions coming from our building. It's two phases. One is the first 500 megawatts and then the second 500 megawatts, and I'll talk about the timing of those two. And we will be employing the local workforce to help us build these buildings and maintain these buildings. Katie will get into the jobs section, and we really want to spend some time on that. This is, if anyone's familiar with the East Park Industrial Park, the property is really just down the road from the ACTC. Ashland Community Technical College, and this is about where these three buildings are, is where the Brady aluminum site was planned for. Actually just on top of the border between Boyd and Greenup counties. And there's two buildings for each phase. So 500 megawatts is two buildings, and then the second 500 megawatts is another two buildings. Starting here with our switch yard, this is where Kentucky Power would bring their power, and then we'd be powering these first two, and then the third and the fourth down here. Sorry for the noise. Probably more detail than anyone is looking for, but I'm a project development guy, so I like to talk about the details. We've got the phases laid out here. Essentially what this, you can't see it because it's too small on this TV. Essentially what it is our phases for building phase one to be operational in 2028. Go over here. How's this? Apologies for the gym acoustics, although we really appreciate being hosted in the gym. So where I was going with that, I think, can you hear me now? Okay. All right. Working through it. So phase one, we will be building two buildings that will be operational by Q3 of 2028 is our plan. That's when we get first power, and that's when so we'll have about 2 years of construction and construction jobs, and then after the construction is complete, we'll have a long-term lease, 15 to 20 years with our tenant, and then the operations are expected to go much longer than that first lease. That's just the first lease. And that first phase will house the permanent jobs to maintain that facility. The second phase is 2 more buildings, and we plan to have those up and running by 2030 for one. And then there's this, I wanted to point out the project that James alluded to. This was the other project that's sort of just ahead of this one, which is in Kentucky, in Hancock County, about an hour and a half west of Louisville. It's a Century aluminum smelter that was retired in 2022. We've done this, this company has worked with a lot of brownfield projects, retired industrial facilities, and converting them to new projects. This is an aluminum smelter, and after we are done with demolition and construction of the new buildings, it'll look like so. Not too dissimilar from what's there, and using the same amount of power that's currently at that facility. This one is just ahead. If you flip again, too small for you all to see, and happy to make these slides available so that you actually can see them on your own. We'll make them available to you. This is the 2 projects related to each other in terms of timing. Justified is the one in Hancock County. That'll be operational in 2027, just about a year ahead of Muskie. So I want to talk about the project benefits with Mike.
I'll do my best. So as you can imagine, with an investment of this size, there are significant community benefits coming down the road. And I think sometimes what's lost in these conversations about data centers is the enormous investment these AI and HPC developments entail. So we plan to invest $3.5 to $4 billion over the next 2 to 3 years to construct these facilities. That does not take into account the tenant that would come in after that, which is another significant revenue influx for local communities. We've done some calculations. We're happy to share them with you, and we're also very much sharing them with the local counties and their PVAs and their financial folks to kick the tires and determine if these are accurate numbers, which I think all of us have now come to agree. So you'll see that there's a $1.5 billion in estimated state and local tax revenue over the 15 years that we present this as we factor in the life of this project. Phase 1 would create 80 to 100 high-paying jobs. I would also like to make clear that we've been having really substantive and, how do I say this? People that speak the same language with the tri-state building trades and John Holbrook. We have done work with unions before in other projects. We have no fears of unions like some businesses do. And in fact, from what I have gathered so far in our conversations with the building trades and others around the building trades, this is a very, very skilled workforce you have here in Eastern Kentucky, which is another reason, yeah. Which is another reason why we were eager to make this investment, because you look at local community, you look at the workforce, you look at the school system, all of those things factor into an investment decision. But I have to tell you, on the skilled trades, it's an enormous, enormous factor in our company's decision to move forward here. There'll be hundreds and hundreds of high quality local jobs on the construction part of this. We've mentioned the Lake Mariner data facility in upstate New York. Last I checked, there were 1,600 contractors working at that site. I would say 95% of them were union. We've emptied just about every hall in upstate New York. So another indication of kind of the workforce around these projects. I also wanted to mention, I don't know if Dr. Ferguson from ACTC is here, but something else that we're very committed to is working with community colleges as part of, it's good business for us because the employees that are developed out of the community colleges often come to work for us, but it also just makes good sense to teach people about this business because it's a business that's going to be around for some time. And I can't tell you how open and forthcoming Dr. Ferguson, Dr. Quarles, and the system have been in working with this on us. I hope at some point in the future we can talk about a real partnership, something that we all agree on. But we have that experience in our past with community colleges. One of my first projects with this company was developing one with Hagerstown Community College in Western Maryland, a very rural part of the state, and it went very, very well. And then also, you know, we're not isolated. I was talking to a friend of mine who's very involved in local educational issues. And I explained to her that when we come into a community, we have a charitable trust, the Terawulf Charitable Trust, but we're very committed to kind of working with the local judge executives and community leaders to kind of figure out how can we make the best bang for the buck with a nonprofit or a charitable contribution. So you'll hear more about that in the future, but I think you will see we put our money where our mouth is when it comes to that. We've actually set up a trust that we fund to do these kinds of things. So just a quick overview of some of the benefits of the project.
Yeah, we've just closed this a few weeks ago. So we've been doing some quick work because I think it's been of interest as to what the estimated tax revenues would be from the project. And it really stems from that investment that Mike alluded to, 3.5 to 4 billion. I'll just highlight that the numbers that Mike was just talking about was just for phase one. So you could expect that to double for phase two. And so when I talk about the tax revenue, I'm also just talking about phase one, because that's what we've committed to in terms of an electric service agreement with Kentucky Power. We still have yet to do the second phase of that, and then we can talk about those revenues. But you could expect this to double. These are too small for you to see again, but you'll see them in the slides that you can take home. I'll walk through some of the high-level numbers. For the state, I'll start at the bottom. We expect a total of about 1.1 billion in tax revenue going to the state of Kentucky. And that's about an average of $73 million a year when you average it out over the first 15 years, was what we'd expect that first lease to be. To the counties, we expect a total Boyd County tax revenue number of about $308 million. Average over the 15 years of about 20.5 million to Boyd County alone. And to Greenup, that total is 111.7, about 7.5 million average over 15 years. I'll just go into some of the details around what comprises that total number. First is the schools, which we care very dearly about. And the Boyd County school system will see over the 15 years in the construction period about 190.5 million, which is expected to be just under 13 million per year to the Boyd County School District. And for Greenup, it's about 48 million over the 15 years total, which averages out about 3.2 million per year to Greenup County. To the county itself, 66.4, and that's an average of 4.4. About 25 to Greenup total to the county, and that's 1.7 average per year. And then there's the remaining taxing districts, which I'll just group into one number, including the emergency and community services, fire department, library, health, that sort of thing. In Boyd County, that's 51 million total over the 15 years, about 3.5 million per year. And Greenup County, it's about 40 million total, 2.5 million per year. So I'm sorry to drag you all through the listing of numbers. I don't like to do that normally, but these are really important numbers. for the area. So we're excited to be able to have done that analysis. Again, these are estimates. These are subject to change. It's pretty early on, but this is based on the engineering and design we have for the buildings and the investment that we expect to go into the first phase and second phase. These would be the first phase numbers, and we'd expect it to nearly double for the second phase. Thank you. Yeah. James reminded me to mention that in these numbers, there are no incentives, tax incentives, no exemptions. That's not what we are seeking. There are some available, and that's not what this project is working with. So I'll hand it over to Katie to talk about jobs and workforce.
Hello again. So we're excited to share more. First, I'd like to start by thanking John Holbrook, Dr. Ferguson, the trades, and ACTC for welcoming us to participate in yesterday's career event. We had a wonderful day meeting many of you, talking about career opportunities at Terawulf, and we hope to continue the conversation today. We're excited by the career opportunities and job opportunities that this project will generate for the community. So we want to provide kind of a high-level overview of what you can expect in the coming months and years. We'll need hundreds of workers in the construction space, which we're expecting will start in 2027, with us being fully operational towards the end of 2028. Hundreds of construction roles, up to 100 roles employed directly by Terawulf once we're operational, from mechanical, electrical, and operational, functional in our offices, and an additional 100 roles through our tenants for their maintenance as well. As I said, we're looking for construction to be in 2027 and fully operational in 2028. Our priority is to hire locally. We want to foster a strong work culture, and we're here to help and hope to meet many more of you while we're here. So please come and say hello if you're interested in learning more about the career opportunities tonight.
Maybe I'd actually take the opportunity to introduce another member of our team, Jim Spoon, who is the Director of Operations. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you came into the company and what's going on up in New York.
Thank you. Can you hear me? My name's Jim Spoon. I've been with the company since 2014. Before that, I was in the Navy. So in 2014, I worked at the power plant, the coal-fired power plant. We were notified that the power plant was going to close. So the company actually allowed me to go back to school and get my degree. And then once I got my degree, I went into more of an office role, which became for the data center. Now I am the Director of Operations. So I am stationed at our operating facility in Barker, New York. So if you guys have any specific questions regarding jobs, you can talk to me. You can ask me questions here. If you want a one-on-one, let me know. Right now, we have about 85 full-time employees that work exclusively for us. When we are done with construction, we anticipate between 130 and 150 for us. And then our customer will also have full-time roles. So we anticipate the total number of jobs full-time will be a little over 300. Like I said, if you have any specific questions about jobs or what the jobs entail, you can find me after this, and I'll be happy to answer.
We want to get into some of the topics where we'd expect, maybe we can talk a little bit first, and then we expect there to be a lot of Q&A as well. Electricity rates and ratepayer protections. Let's dive right into it. I know this is of utmost importance, and expect there to be questions that we'd love to answer. So we have a 20-year agreement with Kentucky Power, and that's actually mandated as one of the ratepayer protections by the PSC to have this long-term commitment. There is no ability to walk away from a contract or walk away from utility infrastructure that's being built for the project. It is priced, and I can talk about some of the other protections, but essentially what, at a high level, there is a substation that's going to be put in place next to the hanging rock transmission line. And that's an investment on behalf of the utility. And what they have to do when they structure the energy service agreement, the long-term agreement with the customer, they ensure that the customer's revenue is far beyond what the cost of that infrastructure would be. That's the substation. Then it comes to our facility, and everything from the transmission line in our facility is on our account as well. There's other ratepayer protections that have not been in place with the PSC previously, but are fairly recent as of the last few years. Another one of those is the amount of collateral that's needed. So in addition to having a long-term agreement with revenue that pays far and beyond what the cost of that infrastructure would be, there is also a big collateral payment. And what that ensures as a ratepayer protection on behalf of the commission is they ensure that there is no ability for the company to walk away and not have paid for that infrastructure. That money's already been given to the utility to pay for the infrastructure, and they hold on to it as a sort of deposit, if you will. There's another ratepayer protection that's called a billing floor, which is essentially you pay for what you use. Normally in your utility bill, you pay for the electricity you use, but there's a minimum payment of 90%. So we could use, if the customer uses 0 electrons, they still pay 90% of the bill, and that's another ratepayer protection that's in place. All that's to say is that the PSC has a very robust process for these types of projects to be approved. We won't get the ability to build any of that infrastructure to support this project unless the PSC and the Attorney General are absolutely convinced that it's not detrimental to the ratepayers. So there's a long approval process that this has to go through, and it's not completed yet. And so that process it's in and of itself is another sort of form of protection. We believe, wholeheartedly believe, because of the amount we're investing, we wholeheartedly believe that the PSC is going to see this as not only not detrimental to the ratepayer, but a benefit to the local system. And it will, there will not be any rates going up because of this project. And there will be, and instead, we should see sort of an alleviation of pressure in the system because of how much this project is bringing to the utility. So we look forward to going through that PSC process, and the outcome we hope will, we expect that the PSC to see it the way Kentucky Power does. There's a lot of questions related to sort of Kentucky Power rate making. And specific cases with Kentucky Power. And I'll just say that we do have representatives from Kentucky Power, I believe, here today. And they will be happy to answer questions as well. I think they have, either we're going to have them at a table or at chairs afterwards, after our Q&A. So more to come. Okay. Water usage, which is another topic that we would love to talk more about in Q&A if people have questions. We've put out some detailed information about it. The judges, I believe, have maybe posted some of the fact sheets and information, and we've also answered some questions for the city of Ashland that sent in some questions about water usage and also the wastewater treatment. Essentially, it's a closed loop system. We're filling it once at the start, before the start of operations, and that lasts in the closed loop for 10 years. And we've provided some detailed figures for volumes that we'd expect to use on a daily basis. the daily potable use. So we will be connecting to the water system to use potable water, just like an office building would use, and that's for the employees. We expect that to be about 5,000 gallons total over the 4 buildings when the project is fully built out. And there was a study done locally on the water system, and it's done in collaboration with the city of Ashland or with the counties, and that was looking at a system availability of about 12 million gallons per day. So what was unused and in excess in the current system is about 45 to 55% is being used today, and the rest is remaining capacity that's unused. And so when we talk about our usage numbers, we often talk about those numbers as it relates to that excess water availability. When we fill the building, it's about 400,000 gallons, and that represents about 3% of one day's excess capacity on the system. So there's 12 million gallons of per day of capacity that's available on the system and is being unused. And filling one building will use about 3% of that in one day. We then add cooling fluid to that water in the closed loop system. It's a propylene glycol. Helpful to know what's in the cooling loop. That essentially helps not allow for freezing in the cooling loop. And then when we dispose of that water after 10 years, we are going to take that water 100% into trucks outside of the 5Co region and dispose of it in licensed facilities. It's not going into the water treatment plant. There will be no water no processed water from the cooling system going into the water treatment plant. Also, there will be zero discharge into the ground waterways, and I just want to sort of make that clear. And would love to answer more questions on it if we can save it for the Q&A, just so we can get everyone out of here on time. And yes, you're definitely going to ask a question. If we can save it for the Q&A, or you need to do it. Yes. So the question was, how often do you change the filters in the water, in the cooling system, and in all the systems? Yep. That's the only one where the water is. And I've got just the man to answer that question, because we had an engineer from our cooling system company that we work with, best in class partner is Data Airflow.
So in terms of the filters and the cleaning of that, so first off, it depends on the particulate level. So we measure that, and there's a pressure reading. And when we have that pressure, it tells us that that filter is now full. So when we're first getting up and running and we're cleaning the water through, getting rid of any residual out of the pipe, you get slag from welding. So that's going to be replaced about every 2 to 3 days for the first month of operation as we're getting that cleaned out. All of those are taken, and that's taken off-site. That's then recycled at a licensed professional. So they're going to take care of that. They're going to get rid of the filters, dispose of them in an environmentally safe way. So that's your first month. After that, you're going to have one filter replaced about every month. And that's going to go through for about 6 months. You're going to do that until you get to stable operation, where you have any impurities out of that water. And at that point, it could be anywhere from once every 6 months to once every 2 years. So they get trucked off site. I don't handle the disposal of that. For example, up in New York, those get taken off. Those are disposed of. No, not landfill. So, yeah, no. That's at the same facility that is taking care of the water that's trucked out. It's typically the same facility. Depending on each region, that's got to be finalized with that. I don't know that I've got that information of who. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So, closed loop systems, they're all over the social media. They get ridiculed. I'll be the first to say that the way that that is represented is pretty awful. As a mechanical engineer, I got into it from environmental science, and there's a term that is based on my philosophy called biomimicry. That is to use nature as a teacher. You can laugh, that's good. Historical systems in data centers for the last 25 years evaporated water directly. It was direct evaporation, direct use. The horror stories that you read about, you see about, things like Meta in Georgia, they're pulling from groundwater, they're decimating the water from the aquifer, and that ends up getting evaporated. So that creates a problem. You have an imbalance between rainfall and extraction. So on the closed loop system, so where you go with this is you're filling up that first time. That water stays there for 10 years. When you compare the water use of that to the direct evaporation, which is where the horror stories are, you're on the order of 1.5% to 2% of the water use in the first year. That's when you fill it. Every year after, it's down to about 0.5%. There is some makeup water. It's a very small amount because you will lose some water out of that system. That gets contained. So there are tanks that we have that contained too, and then that gets removed offsite from the trucking. So when we talk about the scales of the impact, on the most extreme worst case that I've seen, it would be the equivalent of on the order of 2.5 billion gallons of water use per year. The scale that we're talking about here is on the order of 200 to 300,000 gallons. So you cannot even compare these numbers on the annual average use. Yes, there are. So one of the first ones I designed is in Ellendale, North Dakota. That was for a different client. The systems in Barker, New York are all. The question was, are there existing facilities using closed loop design? So for a chilled water system. Yep, water. So let me first answer this question. I'll come back to it. So on the closed loop side for a data center, the first one that I designed was in Ellendale, North Dakota. That was for 100 megawatts. That's been fully up and running now for about a year and a half. There's exactly what we're talking about here. My team goes through, we test, we commission and validate for any leakage to make sure that is completely sealed up, that there is no waste. Then all the facilities up in upstate New York, they're using the same system. Some of those have been running as long as a year now. There's other facilities coming online. And so this is relatively new to the marketplace. Yep. So what experiments have been done? Yeah, we need to wait for the Q&A. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So yeah, we'll get to Q&A afterwards, but the last one of what type of experiments? So yep. Well, so the same concept of this is what's called a ground source heat pump system. Are you familiar with that? A ground source heat pump. Source. Ground source. Pump. Some people confuse it with geothermal. We're familiar with geothermal. Geothermal and ground source heat pumps are a closed loop system. I've worked on those systems and they've been up and running for upwards of 20 years now. So this is not brand new technology. This is newly applied to the data center space because they were making really poor choices for the last 20 to 25 years in how these were built. Bringing this type of system is taking the application of geothermal or ground source heat pump and applying it into the cooling system so that we don't have the water wasted.
Thank you, Mitch. And Mitch will be here for more questions during Q&A. If you got more. Okay, one more topic, and then we should get right to Q&A so we have time for it. This is what the coolers look like. On top, and the reason it's helpful to bring this up when we talk about noise, there's two types of noise. There's indoor and outdoor. Indoor is inaudible from outside the building, and the outdoor noise is really from those coolers that the picture was just up, which are either on the side of the building or on the rooftop, depending on how the facility is designed. We're expecting they might be on the rooftop, I think is our plan for this one. Although there's plenty of space on that property, so we might put them on the side. The fan, and this is something that maybe Mitch can talk about later, is the cooling system uses a fan that's a low noise technology. And we expect that to be about 55 to 60 decibels, about 100 to 500 feet away from the coolers themselves. Put a few little comparisons up here of how that compares to, like a refrigerator noise. And that's fairly close to the building. There is a topographical benefit to this site where there's a lot of trees and ridgelines as well. And we expect this noise to be completely absorbed. And the terrain sort of acts as like a natural sound buffer in the area. Well below the EPA's threshold, and we've also done some work with ECTC on making sure that school is very focused on not having anything be disruptive for their students, and has looked into the noise levels as well and decided that it is acceptable for their students, and we don't expect there to be noise heard at the school. Also, I do want to point out, just because while I have kind of my phone a friend folks over here, there's another firm we work with, best in class partner, not just on noise, but anything environmental. A group called ERM, they've worked with us on several projects. When we go in, if there's an industrial facility and hazardous waste or demolition, they are helping us do it. If we're assessing any permitting or environmental issues, they help us do it, and it's been a really good partnership. I wanted to bring up one of the managing partners from ERM, is the name of the company, to talk a little bit about the work they do. Essentially, it's when we go into a project, hopefully you get to know our company a little bit and the way we do business. We look at it through the lens of what's the best way we can do this, not just what's the minimum, but like how do we design this project in the best way possible for all environmental aspects. And Josh, do you mind just introducing yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Josh Adams. I actually grew up here, and I've worked with companies like Terawulf all over the country to site these things in the most, or actually least impactful way possible. Understanding nothing's ever perfect, but these guys usually identify sites that I am actually happy to work with. I wish all my clients picked them. Like I said, they're not best for everybody, but like you said, it's sited out where the topography is going to take care of most of the noise. We'll model all that. There'll be numbers that we can actually show you eventually. I don't have them today, but like I said, we work with Terawulf and other data center developers like this all over the country and all over the world. And these guys do it some of the best I've seen. So thanks for coming.
Thanks, Josh, for the kind words. I'll just point out one of the things he said, they do the noise study in Hawesville, which is just ahead of this one. the Hancock County project called Justified Data Campus. That is one of the big topics as well in our engagement with the community. And one of our follow-ups from our first community meeting, similar to this one, was a noise question. We have done studies up in our other facility up in New York, and we started to perform. We're just getting started on it now. It kind of requires us to finish the engineering so that their engineers, third party, can come in and say, okay, tell us exactly what equipment you're using, and we're going to do an acoustical study with every detail. Where are the property lines? What's the topographical terrain, and be able to assess the exact noise study for Hawesville. They're performing that right now for the other project, and we'd like to do obviously one here as well. We'll kick off once we have all the engineering done, and then we can hand it over. Let me ask. Josh, does that address the sound waves traveling through the ground?
Typically, no, but that's something we could definitely look into because of the karst stuff in this area.
And we do have a list. Folks did sign up at the beginning, so I do want to honor the list when folks signed up for asking questions. And then I know we have a sheet up here. So this was one as people were walking in. And could I start calling up some folks for Q&A?
And if we could all, questions is always the most important part of this evening, I've discovered. So if everybody could try and ask their question, in a minute or two, and then give us a chance to respond. And there will be circumstances where we won't know the answer. We are very good about following up. So if we can't figure it out with this group, grab us afterwards, give us the email, the phone number, and we'll follow up with those kinds of things, as invariably happens with these things. Thanks. And
Great.
Yes, so the first name, Bryony King, did I get that right? Bryony, and oh, hi. And Alora Henson is next, and then William Reeves.
Hello, my name is Bryony King. I'm here with my husband, Charlie King. We live at the end of Peterson Branch. So thank you for coming to talk with us this evening. I'm really happy to hear about your commitment to community. I'm really happy to hear about your commitment to our community, specifically about being good neighbors. And the reason I'm here is because we are literally your neighbors. Our residence is going to be the very closest residence to the property. We are actually going to share a property line. It looks like we're going to share it, I know, on 1-2 side, but by the look of the aerial view map, it might be 3 sides. There was one map that at the bottom, it showed your projected prototype for what the aerial view of the buildings. My initial question that I was going to come up here and ask was, one, if you plan to put fencing and additional foliage around your facility perimeter, is the first question. But the second one was, are you going to do environmental soil and annual water testing? And it sounds like you partner with a company that might do that. But now I'm more concerned when I saw your picture, that building, CB4, that looks like it's going to be built on a drainage pond. And if that is built on that drainage pond, all of that water will come right down on top of our historic homestead. Our cabin was built in the early 1900s. It's been in my husband's family since the deed books were written, and obviously it's a concern for us. We actually restored the cabin a couple of years ago. So we want to maintain the historical integrity of the property. Uh, I did not, we have been searching for surveys, property lines. We've been trying to look all over about how you're going to border our property. But now my biggest concern is the CB4 building and how it's going to impact us directly, our pond and our well system. Thank you.
Thank you so Thank you so much, Bryony. So look forward to working with all the information that we need to design this the best way possible. I will say, as the VP of Project Development, I'm the one that kind of comes in from the start of the acquisition, the close of the transaction, and then I bring it to the point where we are building a data center and we have a construction team. One of the things I do is take a site without knowing anything and lay out what this could be. And I wanted to lay it out as to really sort of create some visual and some reference for the project. This is by no means what it has to be. And we have not started our survey work. We just closed this transaction a few weeks ago. And so all the topographical and geotech and wetlands and everything is actually performed by our third-party partner, ERM. They have not started it yet. We're just getting to know the property. So I expect, and we'll be taking feedback from folks like yourselves about that important issue. But also I expect that we would be changing the design when that geotech and survey comes in. As part of this transaction with the property, there was more property up that's not shown in this picture that we could build on. And so we are not forced by any means to fit the buildings here or on that drainage. So excuse the early site layout, but hopefully it provides a little bit of reference of what we're building, and then we'll be adjusting accordingly. But thank you for the question. And then Laura, I believe, was in, yes.
This one? That one? Okay. So I think that since some of these decisions weren't just made by Terawulf, at the previous meeting we had questions that they deferred to you guys because they didn't have answers to them. But there are going to be some questions that involve you and some of our county officials. So would it be okay with county officials that helped in the decision-making process to come up and answer questions? County officials? Any decision-making individual county officials, because some of the questions we had at the first meeting, you deferred to Terawulf, but we have some questions that involve all of you, and we'll probably take all the brains to answer them.
Laura,
So if you guys could come up here.
Could I just say, we have a lot of people that want to ask questions of us. I'm not saying they'll be available afterwards, but this was for us to answer questions about Terawulf.
Okay.
They have open meetings where questions can be asked, but we really don't want to I got a whole list of people that I'd like to get to. So if you could just give us our questions, and I'm sure they're available at other times to discuss.
All right. What is the exact date of construction? Like the very first date of construction?
Yeah, so we'll answer the question. Thank you for the question. The question was, when is the exact first date of construction?
I think it's this. That's slightly
Yeah,
better.
is that over here? Yeah. Maybe this is better. So the question was, when will be the first day of construction? So there is not an exact planned first day of construction the way these projects typically work. I can't predict the future, nor can you. That's a fair statement. But we of course want to. These projects are typically take 12 to 18 months for construction, with the first power becoming available around the fall of 2028. If you backtrack from there 18 months, that would be a good estimator for approximately when the construction should be expected to begin. Around that same time, or perhaps slightly before then, is when we would announce who the end user for the site would be. So typically what happens is we will come acquire a site, we'll sign the power contracts, which we've done. And then once it's kind of within the window of what is interesting for the end users, the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsofts of the world, we'll then take that to market. We've just started that process. That will typically be a 3 to 4 month to up to a 6 month identifying which partner we want to work with. And we'll evaluate them on a number of different bases, but ultimately we'll decide who the customer will be. We'll sign a data center lease contract with that customer, and then very shortly after that, we would raise a debt financing, same as we did in upstate New York. We signed a deal with FluidStack and Google, and then very shortly after, we went to the market to raise several $1 billion off the back of that lease agreement that we signed. So again, when will construction start? October of 2028 minus 18 months is probably a pretty good approximate.
So beginning of 2027.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's probably a good.
Because there were 2 different news articles in our local paper where you guys were quoted, you specifically in one of them. So on the June 12th article, it said Terawulf. This is a quote. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Terawulf said, let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, there was something about construction starting
would be
sooner.
In the third quarter of 2026, July through September
Yep.
estimation.
Yeah, so, and maybe I'll make a clarification, then I'll allow Pace to jump in if he wants. But the construction that I mentioned, 18 months, that's for the data center. There could be construction before that specific to the substation and the transmission. So AEP will have their substation that they're building. We will separately have the substation that we are building. So the data center itself is an 18-month process. We may, in anticipation for getting that construction process ready, start the work on the on the substation and the electrical components.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yes. So your date for 2027 construction is after substation construction. And the reason
Correct.
I'm asking is about like permitting, surveying, and deadlines and timelines and things that are required by the county and the state. So let's see, you don't know who your tenant will be, and you don't know what type of data will be stored on these servers, correct?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'll give you the example of who a tenant would be. At Terawulf, we're focused on investment grade customers. Why are we focused on that? Because we're going to be spending a lot of money to build a data center. We want to make sure that they're paying it back. So we're going to be going to, it's going to be a large company, somebody who can commit to, pay us, and also they're going to be effectively paying through the power.
Okay, how many acres of land are going to be disturbed for that construction site?
For the buildings themselves,
Just the whole construction site?
so this parcel right here you're looking at is around 130 to 140.
Okay, what
approximately.
permitting have you all gotten approved? Because we know that there was an NDA signed and there was some information that should have been given to the public and wasn't.
Yep.
And that is concerning, and there's a lot of distrust in this room because of that. And that was why I said you guys might want county officials up here with you, since all
Understood.
parties are responsible for those answers. So have you applied for any permitting?
No, we
Well,
don't. So we
construction.
don't have the data center designs done yet. That typically comes a little bit later in the process.
Okay.
And if it's okay, I'll speak to the NDA portion as well. So we're a public company. This transaction is considered, confidential. It would be insider information for somebody to know that we're putting, a project like this up. We started looking at this site around February. So there was a previous developer who put the project together. We started looking at it in pretty quick transaction for us. We started looking at it in February, conducted diligence, came out, did a number of site visits. So that's around the time that we got involved with the property. So we're a public company. We're just limited by what we are actually allowed to share. As our folks who are also under NDA.
So has there been anything that has been approved by county or state government that gives you all some sort of allowance to build? Have you gotten approval from anyone for anything? So you said no on applying for permits, anything that has been
No,
submitted,
that
filed?
falls under me as the project developer, and I haven't, the last 2 weeks has been busy and I have not gotten to the permitting stage yet. We still have to finish the engineering of the project and be able to lay out exactly what it is we're doing. Usually before we can even do that, we start with surveys. So, now that we own the property, we have to do a wetland delineation, we have to do geotech exploration, so checking the soil, and we also have to do geological survey.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's a bunch of, learning we have to do. Then we take that information and say, okay, what's the best way that we should build with this information? And then once we have that design, then we submit it for permits. There were no permits or approvals or anything that were given as part of before we owned the property.
Laura, are you okay if I move on to the next?
Well, we've had some difficulties.
We're trying to respect everybody's time.
Yes, the answers are longer than I anticipated them being. So let's see. I might give my questions to somebody else in a moment. But pertaining to, you said there's no written or approval of any kind from the state or county to allow for this project to move forward. This project is still an idea stage. You own land, you have an idea, and then that's kind of it.
Yes.
Okay, as permitting and surveys are completed, can you make those immediately available to the public?
I'm not. What's the typical?
We will follow whatever the permitting process are, which is a public process. I can't speak to exactly how they are released, but permits are public.
Yeah, when it goes
Can
through permitted,
you
there's
do
a lot of it we have to make
for
public
our
anyway.
community members of making sure that they are directed to us in a public format?
Yeah, and
Just out of
I would also,
neighborliness.
one of the things I want to mention with this community meeting too is this is not the only one. This is the first, and like to, whatever cadence is sort of appropriate. In Hallsville, we're kind of doing a quarterly check-in. That would be one of the updates I'd, want to bring to the community is, hey, this is where we're at with the surveys. We can present, what the permit allows for us to present publicly, and then we'll, talk about the updates as we go. I think that would be something that we'd love to share with the community.
William Reeves, Mr. Reeves. Oh, you're up.
Yeah. Do you have your microphone? Yeah.
I want to thank you all for providing us with the information, what you hope happens in the future. I want to ask you about things that have happened in the past with Terawulf. Can you give us an example of a constructed Terawulf project and the facilities that were built with the same, or will be built with the same materials on this side?
Yeah, is this on? So I think you should look to two examples. The first example is Lake Mariner Data. That's in upstate New York, Barker, New York. That's a 500 megawatt project. This is a 500 megawatt project. It should be substantially similar.
And
Uh,
my next question would be, what problems have you encountered with that construction project?
so the question is, what problems have we encountered with the construction project?
The construction project, once it's completed.
Yeah, so that's an ongoing project. Some of it's operating, some of it's under construction. I mean, and maybe Jim might have something to add. I'm not on the construction team, but look, this is a new technology. We talked about, we're applying a new closed loop technology that hasn't been applied to data center before. We're moving fast. The market wants us to move fast. Our customers want us to move fast. So there's growing pains with that. I think, I think the community very much welcomes us up there. We have, multi-generation people working at that facility, people who used to work at the coal site. It used to be a coal-fired power plant. Now it's a data center. I think we took a lot of those learnings. We applied them to the project that we have over in Hawesville, which I think is probably the number 2 project that you should look at. And in fact, I would urge you, if you want to get a sense for what this project will be and how it's going to impact the community and what the operation of those facilities will look like. The project in Hawesville, which was the site of a former aluminum smelter, and which, by the way, we're on our dime fully demolishing and doing the environmental remediation. We're not required to do that. It's about $50 million of work that we're doing. That is, again, going to be an almost replica of the project that we're going to be doing here. So, the same, and you'll have the benefit of seeing that 1 year approximately in advance of this project. So, I would urge you to, as that project comes along, we've, again, publicly guided, we're a public company. We've guided our investors that we should announce who that tenant will be by the end of this quarter. So that's coming up very soon. And then construction should commence there pretty shortly thereafter. So pretty soon here, I'll guide you in the next several months. You'll get a pretty clear idea of what's going to happen.
About the my time. What I want to find out is, what complaints have you had about the completed plant up there?
Sam, do you want to take this? So the question is, what complaints have we had about Lake Mariner data from the community?
Yeah, so Lake Mariner Data started as a Bitcoin operating facility, which is not going to happen here. So the main complaints at Lake Mariner Data were initially about noise. Since we went to, exclusively HPC AI, we haven't really had a ton of complaints.
How many? How much? How many?
How many complaints?
Complaints about the noise.
When it was Bitcoin, we had a lot of complaints about it.
No, what's operating now? What complaints have been made about the noise?
No, we've actually brought in people from the town to come in and see the noise levels to give them reassurance about the noise going forward.
But have they made complaints about the noise?
No.
Nobody.
Not since Bitcoin.
Okay.
With just AI, HPC, there has not been complaints about noise. Now, our Lake Mariner Data site is kind of like this one, where it's kind of secluded, right? It's not in the middle of a big community. Barker, New York is a very, very small town. So, no, we have not had many complaints about the AI HPC.
Do you have any information about the decibel count of that existing facility?
Yes, you want to talk about that?
So on that end, so decibel count, what you have is the initial equipment. It's around 42 to 44 decibels.
I'm talking about what it is now.
Right now?
With the last measurement of the decibels.
The operator. Yeah, I mean, it's at like 55 decibels, 56 decibels at the property line, which is less sound than a home's air conditioning system.
Okay. And you also asked about what my question would be, what would keep your lessee from subletting that property or facility to someone else?
So what would prevent them from leasing it to somebody else? Well, we're building them a very specific data center. So, these data centers are purpose-built for, certain applications. The reason they're leasing this is because they want to use it. Um, is there a particular person or a group that you would be concerned about who they lease it to?
No, I'm just saying you would have no control over that, would you?
No, yeah, I think we do.
Well, do you think or do you know?
No, not yet.
Mr. Reeves, I'm happy to have your email. I'm happy to look into that and get back to you. I don't believe that, I believe that if we have our lease, there would be language in it about any subleasing would have to be approved by us. But let me talk to the lawyers and I'll send you an email.
Thank you.
Sure. Suzanne Barker Griffith.
Can you hear me? Okay. I just have a couple questions. I look at everything from how a ratepayer sees things, okay? And what I see is power that we have to buy off the PJM market. That affects our bills. It really drives it up. And I know, is that where you're getting your power from this, is the PJM market?
So I believe the power is going to come from AEP's broader system. So we don't know how they're going to get that
Okay.
power. That's something that they're working on right now.
Okay.
And that's probably a great question. I know they have some
Well,
representatives.
that's interesting. I just read an article about that said that they were going to have to double theirs and that some of that cost would have to go to ratepayers. So that concerns me that you said that, but I'll look into that more.
Okay.
I have another question. On April the 28th,
Yeah. Maybe I'll come back.
On April the 26th, 2026, Kentucky Power applied for a certificate of public convenience and necessity for a new natural gas generation to be built at Louisa. This is for you. Will power from the new plant be going to Terawulf campus at East Park to power the data center?
So we understand, we've seen this. That process had nothing to do with our data center. We were not involved with that process at all. Again, we signed for power. AEP is supposed to go out and figure out how they're going to serve that. So that power is supposed to come online at the end of 2028. So it will come from the AEP system. But
Okay.
again,
I will be sure and ask Kentucky Power about that. But I just sent questions to Amanda Clark and she did not answer those. But I will ask again. But now I will say I sent the same questions to Mr. Kaya right up there. Stand up. And he said that he would get me those answers the best he could. So I appreciate you. I have one more question. According to the SEC records in 2025, Kentucky Power securitized $477 million, and that's before you guys, okay? And that was for the decommissioning of Big Sandy 2. Now, we owe a lot of money on that, and we pay 6.37% charge on our bills, and actually it's a little bit more than that. But as I understand it, you guys are getting no discounts, right?
correct.
And you're going to be paying that 6.37%. Do I understand?
We're paying full. We're not getting any special exemptions. We're paying full freight.
And I want you to know right now, I really appreciate that because that's going to help us pay off that bill a lot sooner. But what I was hoping to hear is before Kentucky Power puts another big securitized bill on our bill for the new power plant, that this one would be paid off. And I don't think that's going to happen. But right now, I just want you to know that I appreciate you all helping us to pay that bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Chris Baldridge. And then it's Jeanette Burns.
Can you hear me? There we go. All right, how's it going? I'm a Greenham County resident. I've been an electrician for almost 20 years. I'm now a public relations major, and I've got just a few questions lined out here. Nothing. Can we fire the sound guy? Is that you guys, Boyd County? Who do we blame for this? So this is what I've written. I've got a few questions for you guys. I don't know how best to proceed. I want to ask you directly, but it seems like I need to address all these guys, so I'm just going to try to get going. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. Like many people here, I'm not opposed to progress, jobs, or investment in our region, but I am concerned about how this project has been handled and what it means for the people who already live here. First, there are serious transparency issues. Residents and state leaders have said that they were caught off guard by this project, and we know non-disclosure agreements were signed behind closed doors. That raises the question, who made these decisions, and why were there people affected left out until afterward? Second, I want to understand the real financial risk, because we've seen projects fail here before. If this deal falls through or doesn't deliver on its promises, what burden falls on taxpayers? Are there enforceable protections? Third, we need to talk about energy and fairness. We are being told this project won't impact local ratepayers, but at the same time, Kentucky utilities are actively seeking rate increases and bills have already been rising. Our Attorney General has stated that Kentucky Power reliably turns a profit for its parent company, even while asking customers to pay more. And across the country, studies show that when utilities expand infrastructure for large data centers, those costs are often spread across customers, not just the companies using the power. So that begs the question, what legally binding guarantees and protections are in place to ensure that this project does not raise electric bills or shift infrastructure costs onto local residents? Because right now, even state officials and energy experts admit that there's no absolute way to guarantee that protection under the current rules. Fourth, let's talk about trade-offs. We're looking at a massive multi-billion-dollar energy-intensive project for a relatively small number of jobs. So we have to ask, is this the best use of our land, infrastructure, and resources? Finally, this project won't be completed until close to 2030. Technology changes fast. My phone is outdated as soon as it's manufactured. How do we know this project won't be outdated before it's finished? And if it is, what happens to the community then? Why should the people here believe this project will benefit them when the risks appear to be shared by the public, but the profits are not? We want clear answers, written protections, and accountability. And I think the last bit of questions I have, thank you. And I cut through all the puffery, and I have the questions laid out 1 through 6 if you'd like. My last one being, I've heard claims that material misstatements were made to shareholders. Can you clarify your recent legal and regulatory activities? Are there any current or previous securities investigations for Terawulf?
Mr. Baldridge, not that I'm aware of. I'd love to get your questions also, and if we can't get to all of them or as fully as you'd like, I'd be happy to follow up. I'd like to say on the NDA, at the risk of perhaps people not accepting my answer, I always try to put myself in your shoes, and at the same time, hope you would do the same here. James mentioned earlier, we are a publicly traded company, and there are unbelievable laws and regulations by the SEC that are imposed on publicly traded companies about material disclosures. And if they are made before they're properly vetted by the SEC and your investors, fines, lawsuits, really heavy-duty stuff. So you're in this tough situation where you understand the public wants to know about the project as soon as they can. But at the same time, you can't disclose this and also competitively. So you're in the situation where you're caught between both of those things. So in this circumstance, I think on our side, we understood that we're going to have to disclose this at the time the SEC says we're going to have to disclose this, and then we're going to have to move quickly to try and get accurate information to people in the community about what's going on here, and that we're probably going to take a hit that we didn't get that information out as quickly as we should have or could have. In this circumstances, lawyers are very clear about what you can say and when you can say it. So I don't want to say I apologize for that, but I understand why that happened, why when NDAs are signed and there are people that are saying, how come we didn't know about this? But this project wouldn't be here before you or any county, I'd have to say, unless companies like us had assurances from local officials that they weren't going to disclose material things could legally put in jeopardy or our competition. So that's the explanation I can best give you on the NDA, and I can have James follow up with a bad microphone.
What's up? Here, this is the one he's speaking about right now.
Yeah. So the second question was, if this project fails, underperforms, leaves promised jobs and investment unrealized, what legally binding protections?
And enforceable, because I see that
Yep.
a lot in the education sector. Just because somebody breaks the rules doesn't mean there's actually a governing body that can
Yeah.
enforce those rules.
So when we, and I think the important one here probably is with respect to power. So as part of this, remember, we talked about this, AEP is building a new substation. When we signed those agreements, we agreed to post letters of credit. We are posting in the near future, and it ramps up over time, over $600 million of letters of credit. If we walk away, that $600 million plus letter of credit is on us, meaning that if AEP, Kentucky Power, once started building a substation, then we walked away, they would draw from that to pay for it. Also, last year, the PSC came out with a new ratepayer protection scheme. We're required to do a 20-year contract, meaning we have those letters of credit. About half of that will stay outstanding throughout the life of the project. That represents roughly 2 years of payments. So if we walked away, we have a termination payment representing 5 years of payments that we would have to make up front. They would also have the letters of credit outstanding. So that's another protection. And then we're required to pay for 90% of what they are providing us, every day of the year. So even if we're only, and we don't plan to use 90%. So we actually will be paying for more than we're using. These data centers typically operate 50, 60, 70, 80%, depending on the day and what's going on, but we're going to be paying 90%.
So to that, what enforceable guarantees exist that the project won't increase local utility rates or infrastructure and grid upgrade costs onto taxpayers?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. So previously, and the reason they put these ratepayer protections in place, where you had people that were signing large energy contracts, but they didn't have these long terms. They didn't have these, you're required to pay 90%. So as an example, there was a Bitcoin mining project that we're aware of that, they left. The infrastructure may have been, and I don't have all the details, but as an example of what could happen, maybe somebody built infrastructure, but then they left, and then they're no longer paying. Here, as I just said, we're posting these letters of credit, which the utility can draw on, and we also have a termination payment. We have required to pay 5 years of fees. That's the only way that we can walk away, and that's a lot of money. That will pay for the infrastructure. The payments that we're going to make when you actually do the math of the 90% the revenues will exceed the cost of the infrastructure that's being built.
So what entity will serve to make sure that's done?
So this is governed, that we sign these contracts under an approved PSC IGS tariff. So, the AG's office also has the Office of AG Ratepayer Protection. So that's another check and balance. They're allowed to go look at that and say, hey, PSC, I know, this is what you've agreed, but, they might raise their hand and say, hey, we're not sure this exactly works. So there's checks and balances that, allow to ensure that the ratepayer is, in fact, being protected.
Okay.
I'll just add, as it relates to the question about, are we staying around? I mean, this property in East Park has been vacant, I believe, for 28 years. And there was obviously a big project that was planned for there with Brady, and that didn't materialize. And that was a big loss of tax revenue. I mean, this is maybe more qualitative and high level than the details, but we're very invested in this project. We already are very invested in this project. We're committed to this community. We're committed to building this project and seeing that tax revenue flow into the community. And we'll be here for the long run. We don't sell our projects. We continue to maintain ownership of the building and then have the leases for the long term. That's what's best for the business. And I'll just say that the tech, you brought up this question about whether or not, the technology is going to change and there's upgrades, the longevity of the project. And I just want to touch upon that. The great thing about what our company builds is it's pretty simple. It's a building with power and cooling. Where the technology changes is really in the server racks. And so you might see our tenants change their servers, and they have the ability to. They have the ability to swap servers in and out as they need to. And our building doesn't go anywhere. Our value add as Terawulf, where we bring the power and the cooling to their racks, doesn't go anywhere. So the project is not going anywhere, even if the technology evolves over time. Just wanted to sort of address that.
Well, one other point I want to make with respect to those letters of credit that I said that we'll be posting, and we'll be posting some pretty large letters of credit here soon. That's capital that our company will have at risk. So we're going to be invested in this project. If we walk away and decide not to build a data center, then we're walking away from hundreds of millions of dollars that we've already invested, not to include, the investment that we made with the site and so on and so forth. Yep. So again, this probably falls under, you'll know relatively soon probably, this probably falls under what is non-public information, but we're working with somebody, it's a very well-known bank.
Jeanette Burns, just giving you the heads up.
To have that last question answered.
I'm sorry.
Demand or market conditions change?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was, what happened if demand or market conditions change? That's a great question. I care about that question a lot too, because we're going to be investing a lot of money. We're going to be investing $3.5-ish billion into this data center. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's why I mentioned when we're going out to identify who the customer will be, we are looking for, again, an investment grade company, somebody like a Google, a Microsoft, an Amazon, somebody who can pay the bills. Somebody we won't be able to raise the financing for this unless it's a good customer. And when we sign that lease with that customer, we want to make sure that we're getting paid too. So we make them sign up for a 15-year term so that we can pay off the investment that we've made. So if, we would be highly there's no incentive for us to have, signing up for a lease that the customer is not going to stay there for at least the initial term and beyond. Hopefully that's helpful. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to walk out in the middle here. Okay, I can address all of you this way. I got kind of a big mouth, so. Okay, first of all, I want to thank the lady and gentleman here for giving us an opportunity to ask some questions. I'm a Kentucky native, and I am concerned. I have lived in this area, this region, all my life. And all my life, I have been seeing our people exploited, usually by big companies from other areas that move in, make a big mess of pollution and other things, and move out. Now, I have seen this. I've heard about the dangers of data centers, but I just recently researched this. And I am concerned, like I said, that pollution and health risks, I think, are great. Now, I have read that the data centers use gas turbines, and they also use diesel-powered backup generators. Now, those emit high levels of nitrogen oxides, which are very dangerous. Now, something I remember is about 20, 25, maybe 30 years ago tops. In this area, we had a cancer rate, some types of cancer, 4 to 5 times as high as the rest of the nation. Now, there was a reason for that. Now, it's lowered to be more like the national average due to a lot of steel mills closing, and Ashland Oil actually put in something called a vape recovery system. Reason I know about that is my husband was an inspector. His main job was to make sure the vape recovery system worked, and it did help. Now, what I am so concerned about, and my question is this, it's a twofold question. How long do you expect to be running these dangerous turbines and generators? And the second part of that is, are the older data centers still using theirs?
Thank you very much for the question. That's a great question. One thing that I think you'll be very happy to hear, we are actually new entrants into the space. We don't do full diesel backup on our site. Most data centers that you see today, for every megawatt that they're drawing from the grid, they're going to have a megawatt of diesel. We don't do that. Why don't we do that? Because it's actually bad for business. The diesels that people have on their site are used as backup generation. When you think about the cost of what it takes to build these data centers, those diesel generators that run once a month for about 10 minutes for testing on the historical, not ours, but other data centers, it's about 20 or 30% of the cost. So that's cost that we don't want to spend, because if we don't spend that and we charge a customer the same rate, we're actually going to make more money. So what we do instead is we identify sites that are in really good areas that have strong connections to the grid. So here we're connected to the 765 kV line. It's very high voltage, very robust. And so we're going to have 2 lines running connected from the 765 to our site. So that's how we get our redundancy. We get our redundancy by having 2 transmission lines. We're not going to have a 1-for-1 diesel backup. It doesn't make sense. We don't want to do that because we actually make less money. Yeah, again, it's the way that we do this, we have a piece of equipment that's called the UPS. It's effectively a battery. And the reason, maybe I'll tell you why people do diesels. The reason that people have diesels is because historically a lot of the end tenants were very concerned about making sure that they had power to their, computers, their GPUs, whatever, for 99.999% of the time. When we went to market the first time in upstate New York, we were asking them, why do you guys really need that? Like, why do you need 99.999% of the time? What we care about is, if we do lose power to the site, as in if the grid loses power for whatever reason, what we pitch to our customers is, we just want to make sure that your equipment is safe. So how do we do that? We have short-term batteries that run the cooling systems for a short period of time that continue to run that closed loop system through those hot components in the racks to ensure that we bring them down to a safe temperature. And that's what we say, hey, okay, let's say you lose 10 minutes of the year because you don't have power. Who cares? It's going to cost 20, 30% less, and you don't have to have. We think it's crazy to build a whole backup power plant on site just to support 10 minutes of the year.
Okay, so we can go on record that you are not using the diesel backed up generators then, correct?
So we will not be using a 1-for-1. We maybe have a very small amount. Not sure if they'll be natural gas or diesel or battery.
So a small amount, you're going to be using a small amount.
Do you want to maybe?
Sure. Yeah. I could. So we're designing this right now in Hawesville, and are looking at there's for the what's called the meet me room, where the fiber comes in. There's backup generators, and again, it's tiny. We are looking. There's gas that comes to the Century aluminum site.
Okay.
And so, hello. Gas gensets there, and it's a very small amount using the existing gas that they already had coming to the site. There's another technology that we really love. That's a fuel cell, and we've looked at that. Again, we're not. We haven't commenced the engineering for this project yet, but in Hawesville, we're looking at this where there's a fuel cell that can use gas and it has zero emission, no NOx coming out of. It's just it's kind of similar to a hydrogen, if you've heard of that. And so there's several technologies that we can use that are not turbines.
Okay.
And we're very, cognizant of the community's awareness and of a particular technology, and that gets factored into the engineering decision.
Okay.
So what I would guide you again, go look at our upstate New York Lake Mariner site. We're not doing the full 1-for-1. Same thing in Hawesville. We're not doing the full 1-for-1. It's not good for our business to do that. No, that's so it's not even a question of like what's cheap and what's expensive. It's we're already connected to the grid, and we have an agreement with Kentucky Power and AP to give us power. If we were to put generators on, we would basically be doubling our spend, and we'd still only be using the power from the grid. So it from a business perspective, it just doesn't actually make sense for us.
So we can move along, and we do want to realize you guys are taking your time at a dinner here, but we're going to stick around and continue to answer questions. But Paul Burns, I believe, is next.
Okay.
Well, I'm an old man. I've been around for a while. Can you hear me now? I guess about everybody's answered the questions, huh? Okay, can you hear me now? About everybody's done pretty much said what I wanted to say, but I got a few things. And my concern is more about the communities, about the people. This is a poor community. These are fairly poor people around here. Few of us can get lucky and have a pretty good life. There are a lot of us that are, poor individuals. And when you come in and you promise that you're going to do something, I expect you to do it. I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to be down your throat. And when you say that you're going to bring good jobs, I expect you to bring good jobs. I heard you're going to bring good jobs. I know there's not going to be very many good jobs, and from your building, but there's going to be some. And I hope they're high-paying jobs. I hope there's something like 80, 100,000 a year. Well, that's about what the average runs now for middle-class people, and we really need it in this area. Yeah. And what I've heard so far that your construction site is going to be pretty clean, what I can tell. I'm going to say something, probably going to make a lot of people irritated, but this is not to you guys, it's to a lot of our local politicians that we got. We got a lot of companies that shut down and left this area. And when they shut down and leave this area, they leave it in the awfulest mess you ever seen in your life. We got acres of riverfront that can't be used because it's too polluted. And nobody seems to care. They say it needs to be cleaned up, and some says, well, we'll never be able to use the ground again. That's really sad. And but this is really to the local politicians. I don't know who you are or where you're at, but you need to be thinking about all the ground we got around here that's polluted and ruined, and it needs to be cleaned up.
John, speak up.
It needs to be cleaned up. You need to do your job. I've done mine. I'm 70 years old and I'm still going. I don't know how much more longer I got to go, but I'd like to see this place grow, and I'd like to see it, be successful. So let's all do our jobs, and let's all join together and be good citizens and do what we need to do.
Mr. Burns? Thank you for your honesty. Um, we can't really speak to things that have happened in the past,
I know you can't.
and I don't expect you to trust us or become our best friends tonight. But we tried our best to get information out as soon as we could, and we're here to start the relationship. And you don't earn trust overnight. You got to prove it, and that's what we plan to do. And judge us by our actions as we move forward. But I do appreciate your directness and your honesty in talking to us.
Well, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna judge you by your actions, and I think you should expect me to do that. And the community needs to do that. And it's a good thing.
Yes, sir.
We look over each other's back. You pollute the ground, we want it cleaned up. You pollute the air, we want it clean. If we're bad neighbors, we want to clean ourselves up a little bit too. But we all need to look out after one another. So
Thank you.
thank
Thanks for your question.
Gail Lincoln. Gail Lincoln. Okay. Dr. Aggie Vanderpool.
Yeah.
Those answers are public. The information that was provided is public.
Yeah,
It's a public record. I think the classified thing kind of was a
The simple answer. It's
formatting
actually,
error.
I got it. It's a really simple answer. It was in draft. It was a draft. Not now that it's now that it's public, it's not obviously confidential. Yeah. Well, well, thank you. Some answers are actually pretty easy. Mhm.
Yeah, that's no, that's right. Yeah, it does. So that's on site. and that's we keep in a tank, and then we yeah. So, and this was in the water usage fact sheet that we put out as well, and also in the responses we sent to City Ashland about the water. So the water we use total of, I think depends on the hot days of the year, somewhere 300, 400 hours per year, and we use them to mist. And then we are going to refill those tanks with the water, and we want to explore different ways to refill those tanks.
So off that volume, I didn't know the final volume. So to highlight what the misting system is. So when we design these data centers, they expect for us to look, so we look at historical climate data. So this is available from NOAA, typical meteorological year data. We take that data and we look at what is the extreme of extreme case that can happen anytime out in a 20-year band. So what can happen for 1 hour over 20 years. And so the data center tenants ultimately want that design to be capable of handling those extreme conditions. So when we have to design the infrastructure, it has to work for that case. When we work through the design of the misting, it's to determine the number of hours. So mentioned 300 to 400 hours. That's on the worst year in a 20-year history. That's what could happen. And so then the storage volume is sized to match that. Most years, you're barely touching that storage volume. Most years, you might use it for 60 to 80 hours. And actually, the manufacturer of the equipment, they won't guarantee their warranty if you go over 375 hours. Yep. Where it becomes critical is at above 94 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes. Yep. Yeah. And it's hot. But it's not that hot every hour of that day. Yep. So it's triggered by that atmospheric temperature for those hours when it's above. If you look at the data, this is NOAA data. It's publicly available.
That 6 million gallons of building will have to be refilled given its average summer.
The number of the volume that we were saying per building is actually for the entire year, the usage. And how often we have to fill it is when we use water to mist during some of the hottest hours that Mitch is talking about, then we'll start refilling some of the tanks using those. But that's not the 6 million gallons to refill. That's the usage over the entire year. It's hard to give a daily number for that, so I just gave it an annual. What's that?
Would not empty a tank in the course of a year.
Know how big the tank is going to be, but it's no, we will. Yeah. Well, we don't need all 6 million gallons at once. That's over the course of the entire year. So it's probably going to be a much smaller tank. That's a great engineering question that I would love to dig into. And you've submitted those questions before, so you know where to send them. And I would love to come back with a new set of questions. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think maybe it's it'd be great to do two things. One is I would also the study with the city about the system availability actually was performed previously from the developer that we purchased the project from. We'd like to do an additional study and confirm those numbers. And then also like to revert on some of your, more technical questions, and then we can make those answers public like we did. The feasibility study public too, yeah. I think that would be very important to everyone that you have the water here.
I would just like to leave local terrible if I may. I've been very blessed this summer to be able to have done solid program. So I work with some of the best and brightest of our young minds in the state. And always here, every day that I see those young, bright faces, I am reminded that not only I, but all of us have a responsibility to secure the future of those young people. And I feel very strongly about this. We want assurances from Terawulf that you are not going to damage our natural resources and raise the cost of living in this area so that our youth cannot stay here. We want a guarantee in writing. So the Terawulf builds this database and it goes south for whatever reason, spills, accidents, obsolescence, that you are going to clean up your mess and not leave it on our children.
Thank you very much for your questions. We agree with this. And let me give you an example. At Hosville, at the aluminum smelter that we purchased, we're actually cleaning up the mess of somebody else, and we're paying for it. And we're spending about $50 million, and no one required us to do that. It's happening. You don't need it in writing. We're doing it.
Thank you. Bryson Blevins, and then Ellen Spiels, I believe.
Do you want a mic?
My name is Bryson Blevins. I'm also a teacher at Montana.
He's also a teacher, and he also yells at children all day.
Our question largely revolves around the fact that you said that the excess water is going to be used by the national system around 45 to 65%. What do you need excess in that system? There are no drawdowns that are going to occur into that supply, this supply. Thank you.
The two water uses we talked about. Well, so three. One, we fill up the water in the closed loop system from the city water main line, and that represents about 3% of the daily excess.
So basically, to fill up the system one time requires 3% of the excess water
for that day. And then the second use is the bathrooms and sanitary potable water, for similar to office buildings having the same number of employees. And that's with all four buildings about 5,000 gallons per day. So that's our sort of daily usage. And then there's when we refill, we're sort of topping up the misting tanks in the summer. That's the third use. We'll be using the water daily for bathrooms and potable. Oh, Joe. After.
So it's minimum 10 years up to 15 years. So what is done on that, you're measuring pH level. So if the pH level goes too low, that then becomes problematic and corrosive to the pipe. So in the system, we're monitoring pH, historically with 25% propylene glycol, food grade glycol. We purposely are going that route. There's other glycols that are awful. We won't even talk about it because it's not an option. But at about 12 years on average is when the pH starts to go off. At that point in time, you have a drawdown and refill. That's 400,000 gallons.
Biocides that would be added to that water.
The biocides that are added, that will be stored on site. That's going to be in storage, that is contained. And then when the drawdown is completed, that is done in tanks and taken off site, so that way it can be done at a facility. So that is not going into the water treatment, that is not going into the ground.
Who is evaluating the waste that is going to be approved from?
So, I mean, honestly, we're so early, like even the 6 million gallon reference there, I think that's a block number because we haven't done all the engineering, but we've been working with Nalco on other sites. They handle a lot of the wastewater and the aspects of that. Now, we also look at other providers in the region if there's someone that's more local. So every site that has to be evaluated. We're not talking about filling this up with water for close to 2 years at this point, 1.5 to 2 years at best. And so sometime in 2027, we're going to have the evaluation of who's best suited in the region to take care of that. Absolutely. So the reason I highlighted earlier, the closed loop, even with the misting, the amount of water that we're talking about, you're talking about 2% of the water use. So I live in Oregon, and in Oregon, right, we're temperate rainforest. Everyone says we have plenty of water. In Prineville, Oregon, Meta went in there. What did they do? They did direct evaporative cooling. It was fine with one Meta building. Then Meta did a second building. Then Apple said, oh, that's a cool spot. We'll do 2 buildings. And Microsoft added a building. Then we had 5 buildings pulling off of that aquifer, and they destroyed that aquifer, all with direct evaporative cooling. I saw that happen firsthand. The state came in, and they can now no longer run that facility during summer months because of the watershed issues. It became a salmon issue. So when they lost that ability to run their compute, they now have an asset that's essentially worth nothing for 3 to 4 months of the year. So the reason for going to the closed loop system, and the reason I highlight that technology's been around for 100 years. Geothermal wells in Klamath Falls, Oregon, it's been running for 60 years. So you have the technology, we're applying it to data centers, so it's new for data centers because we're optimizing the water side to reduce that burden. Because the drought risk, the water tolerance risk, we have to address it. If the data centers don't address it, it's pointless to even build these.
What are the emergency remediation plans in place should the biocides fail, or should the water first with the environment?
Our environmental partner.
Just like any other industrial facility, it'll have a spill prevention control plan that'll be monitored by KPDS permitting requirements. So if a spill happens, it'll be reported to the state, it'll be cleaned up. I mean, there will be plans put in place that'll be outlined and it'll be public permits so everybody can see them. Just like Marathon, you can pull their SPCC plans online on the state website.
It's all heavily regulated and
Ellen Spiels and Landon Gould.
So a lot of people have left because they couldn't understand anything that was being said. We had a lot of people that had hearing problems and such that left, but I've heard that some folks are watching Tri-State Media Services live and it's clear, so if you want to rewatch it, now what? Me? Him. All right, so I have a question for you, sir. Is this the last meeting we're going to have with you? Just yes or no will work.
No.
Excellent. All right, so my next question is Bloomberg reported in April that more than half of the U.S. data centers planned for this year are now expected to be delayed or canceled, not for lack of money or land, but because the specialized gear needed to step down grid power and distribute it safely inside hyperscale facilities is in critically short supply. Lead times have stretched to 3 to 5 years for large power transformers. There isn't enough transformers, switchgear, and other critical electrical equipment to bring the projects online. So my question to you is, as of today, do you have the transformers purchased and scheduled for delivery in order to bring these buildings online in the time frame set forth, or will you be running those diesel generators?
Thank you for the question. So the answer is, do we have those transformers secured today? No, but we're very close. So for this specific project. So they've been identified and they're available.
Okay. So my other question is, you keep saying over and over again that you're going to take the blow down and you're going to load it in trucks and take it somewhere. Where are you taking it? Like, whose community are you taking it to? Where's it going to?
So and maybe do you want to jump up and chat about this? The answer is it will go to a licensed facility. It's too early because we're so far away and we're early in the planning process. So we haven't, I think we maybe mentioned this before. We haven't identified that specific facility. We're happy to make that available when we do select that facility. It's a bit early in the planning process to have identified that, but knowing that that's important to you, we're happy to make that
I want to make
available.
sure it's not in the state of Kentucky. I wish it was going nowhere, but All right. So I have a question. I don't know anything about technology. So you're building the building. You're going to lease it out. Google made a major investment in you. And I read an article that was published in 2025 that said they wanted to get into Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency. So
Yeah. So I think I know where this question is going. We're not going to do Bitcoin mining. It's not a good business. This business is just, frankly, from a business
I know you
perspective.
said you wouldn't, but my concern is I read somewhere I thought that Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency runs hotter. So if you're leasing out your space that you've built, how are you going to control your tenants?
So the facility that we're building is fundamentally very different. On a per megawatt basis, this is going to cost about $10 million for the data center itself per megawatt. A Bitcoin mining facility costs about $500,000 per megawatt. So if somebody were to run Bitcoin mining in the type of data center that we're building, it would take them 100 years to make their money back. You just would never do that.
Okay. All right. And then this is a long shot, but I'm going to ask it. Are you all willing to publish your electricity bill and your water bill every month so that we can make sure you're sticking to what you said you would?
That's a good question. Let us take that back. We're not going to make any commitments today, but we'll discuss that.
Well, I think it would build some faith in the community because I've studied data centers now for 3 weeks, of which I really wasn't happy doing, by the way. And none of it's good. The water usage is really critical around here. Y'all probably don't know this, but up where I live, people haul water to live, and we watch every drop. So that is why we want to know for certain that you are going to stick to what you say and not steal the water, not pollute the water, and just stick to what you agreed to.
Thank you.
Landon Gould.
So the first thing I'm going to ask is, were you all aware that the process you purchased this property in was illegal? Because in Kentucky, statute is 67.0802, any purchase of public land, which this was, requires public notice before signing. So all of your purchase was done in private without our notification. That's against state law.
I believe I have your email here. I'm happy to take the site, talk to the lawyers, and get you an answer.
We certainly don't believe our purchase was illegal, but we're happy to follow up. If you want to send us what statute you're pointing to, we'll take a look.
Also, you had our elected officials sign NDAs because you claim you're publicly traded. You have to protect yourself for the SEC regulation. Public officials that are elected are not legally bound by NDAs. You all cannot enforce it. They can break it, and you have no power over it. So, why did you approach these officials asking them to sign NDAs when they aren't enforceable?
Again, Mr. Gould, we believe they were legally enforceable, and I'm happy to give you a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, so I can happy to give you kind of the lawyer's explanation for why this was all legal.
Arguably, they might not have been able to specify the client for trading reasons, but they could have 100% anonymously said that there was a client interested in this property and what it was used for. So this was all done in secret to mislead the people because you didn't want pushback.
Do you want to talk about that?
As I said, I'm happy to get you the lawyers and legal sites on why this was legal, and I appreciate your opinion.
But you're claiming that you care about the community, but you directly subverted the community.
Well, I guess I would take that we're here today and have committed that we're going to be here for the long haul, and this isn't the first public meeting that we will engage with. And you have to judge us on our actions, and I hope that you will.
Another thing is you all keep going on about these security agreements you have with AEP, but all those go out the window if you all file bankruptcy. You're not legally bound to them at that point. So then AEP will push the cost onto us because it won't be recoverable from you.
So that the letters of credit are secured by the bank. So the bank will effectively guarantee that payment. That's what a letter of credit does.
If you file bankruptcy, they'll just sell it off anyways, and the AEP probably won't get most of it.
We're happy. Look, we don't have. I wish we had all the answers. We can follow up with you on that too. That's not how we see it, but clearly concerned about it.
I say the county should have demanded an environmental protection bond from the company before they even talked to you. Because if you all just go bankrupt and disappear, then somebody has to clean it up. And if you all had paid a bond to the county, then they could. But as of now, they couldn't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob Griffith. And then Heather Hayes.
Hello? Sorry, I'll try to make this quick because a lot of my stuff has already been answered today. My question is, with how much we are being asked to trust and believe in this project, it's likely to harm us environmentally and economically, both of which has been discussed a lot today. How can we expect to see any sort of return on the data center for our community when the CEO of Terawulf himself has recently sold about 300,000 shares, or about $900 million? If you're about to start on this big project, why would you kick it off with 1 foot outside of the door?
So the management team still owns a very large majority of the stock. So that We No, he's not stepping away. He's still. You can look online publicly how much he still holds. He holds a lot. Well, you wanna-
Um, I got to tell you, I'm happy to get back to you. I don't know about all of this shares, stocks. We were here to talk about the Muskie Data Center. I can guarantee you that the management team owns a huge portion of this company and are committed to it for the long haul.
Yeah, the management team has also been working together with the same individuals for 20. So like the core executives of this company have been working together, like those same individuals for 20 plus, close to 30 years in some cases. So this isn't, nobody's running away from the company. That's the furthest thing that this is.
You can see why selling stocks at this turning point would be a red flag. And we're also curious, I know we weren't allowed that our elected officials, but it's not today. Or were they aware of it selling?
Well, I mean, look, I don't track who sells stocks, who keeps stocks. People get compensated in stock. They keep some, they sell some. That's a personal decision. Our executive team.
Personal decision of the CEO.
Our executive team holds a lot of shares of this company. They are heavily invested, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Can you speak for why the investor or why the CEO decided to sell?
No, I can't speak for anybody else. I can speak for myself.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Heather Hayes. She left. Okay. Clayton Wills. And then we have Shauna McCown.
Hi, my name's Clayton Wills. Thank you all for being here today. Okay. So before I ask my questions, I want to say that I'm not 100% against this project. I understand that there can be economic benefits such as jobs, taxes, new businesses, as well as the influx of new workers that come in that'll be shopping at our stores, eating in our restaurants, and enjoying the things that this community has to offer. Let's talk about jobs. Is there a written guarantee for the number of our union workers that will be working at this facility?
At this date, there is not. We are in discussions with the unions and with the goal of trying to develop an MOU on hiring.
Okay, all right. Some people, and you touched on this briefly, but some people believe that AI and HPC facilities can just suddenly turn to Bitcoin mining. But that's not true, is it? You use a totally different server for AI and HPC than you do for Bitcoin mining, correct?
Yeah, it would not. It would make economically zero sense. It's very expensive equipment. You would never make a return if you were trying to mine Bitcoin with this equipment or in these centers. You wouldn't.
So let's touch back on noise. When you did your noise study, how many chillers were used in that study?
Noise study. The question was how many chillers were used in the study?
Yeah. Were used in the study.
So,
You said it doesn't exceed.
so the chillers are all indoors, so that noise doesn't contribute to the outdoor sound. That's all in a soundproofed area.
Okay.
So the
So
dry
the
coolers, so I believe it's 17 per building. And so when we go through the noise study, there's a couple things, right? And it's probably what you're getting at. Two things that sound the same actually sound like more. And then as you group it and you double and double and double, it gets louder. So for each doubling, it adds 3 decibels.
Yes.
So when you start off at something that's 44 or 45 decibels and you get to 17, that's 63 decibels or 64 decibels.
Right.
However, then when you start to go 100 feet away, you start to drop your decibel level. And from 100 feet away to 200 feet away, you then, every time you double your distance away, you reduce 4 decibels.
Okay.
So as you go further away with the property line that now pushes out, close to 5,000 feet from the ejaculator? Even if it's 3,000 feet, you're down under 55 decibels pretty quick.
All right. As a registered nurse, I have concerns regarding the health and well-being of the residents in the surrounding communities. Large studies on the health of citizens near or within a certain proximity are just not available. However, there have been some small studies done. One in Michigan found that fine particulate matter was increasing the rate of heart disease. Nitrogen oxide, which is harmful to the lungs, causing an uptick in asthma and other related lung diseases. In an interview on power analysis, your CFO, Patrick Fleury, I believe is how you say his last name, said that you will not be using diesel as backup generators, but you will be using CCGTs, which are the gas powered.
Yep.
Is that correct?
So let me clarify. That's for a different site. So the question was, will we be using CCGTs here? The answer is no. CCGT is, a large scale power plant. We have another project in Maryland where we are considering building CCGT, a natural gas power plant, but here that will not be the case.
Okay. The SEC doesn't actually prohibit publicly traded companies from discussing possible new locations in public, does it?
I think this would be, and I believe the answer, and we can come back and give you specifics from our legal team if you would like, but this would be a material transaction for us. So if it's a very large company, it may not be material. For us, this would be material. This represents an important, a really important kind of site for our company. So, just the actual revenues that it would bring to our company, and that's why it's material.
So, okay.
Yeah. And then also, just beyond that, for competitive reasons, we find, the site, this area very attractive. Our competitors probably also find it the same. So if we were going around and talking about it, you would have 10 people coming in and, competing on the same site. So just from competitive dynamics.
So are you planning to do anything to help mitigate any possible pollutants that are going to come from this that can affect the residents?
Yeah, and I'll let some of our experts speak after this, but just taking a step back, the philosophy of our company is we want to be good neighbors. And like I said, judge us on our actions. If you look at our other projects, if you look at Hawesville, we're coming in, there's, that aluminum smelting, there's a lot of environmental concerns that are left behind from a smelter. Again, we're going in, we're cleaning that up, we're demolishing the site, it's going to look better, it's going to be cleaner, it's going to be healthier. Again, no one asked us to do that. We're doing that. We think it's something that you do to be a good neighbor. And why do we want to be a good neighbor? It's A, it's because we care. B, it's also good business. If we come in, we hope that, and we hope that the more we come and talk to the community and the people that actually live here, they'll actually start to realize, this is, like Mike said, this is the first of many times we're coming in. But if you actually like us, we can continue to grow. Hopefully, that's our hope. It's a great area.
No, I was just going to say, Mr. Wills, I think we've missed a point here tonight is that we bought the last 2 operating coal plants in the state of New York 6 years ago, with the idea, and we went to the governor and the local folks and kind of said, we know that you're trying to phase out coal here in New York, but we believe sites like this are going to be where energy transition happens. We didn't predict it was going to be AI or HPC or Bitcoin. We just knew with big power lines coming in, industrially zoned, relatively secluded, these are sites where something promising is going to happen. But along with taking that, we also took the risk of a coal plant with ash piles and environmental regulations that we had to file. And we do. Those are much better off sites now that we took them on rather than let them lay fallow for 20 years looking for a buyer. A little bit of a different situation here as well is that this is already a reformed brownfield site, but there are some characteristics around it is that we're in this, and if there's an environmental problem, we got to fix it.
Yeah, in addition, it's going to be an operating industrial facility, so there'll be air modeling if there's going to be any emission. There'll be on-site, or on-site independent monitors as well, and the state can come in, the county can come in at any point and do an inspection. So that also helps keep any industrial site. Somebody referred to the refinery earlier. They weren't going to sell the scrubbers on their own. So
I think the thing that gets me, as well as a lot of other people, is that, we were put on our heels over the announcement that, hey, you're getting a data center before we had any say in the matter. And that's what gets us, because the history of this area, as some people have talked about, is not good. And it doesn't make sense to me that if Terawulf wants to be a company that builds a data center that is not like the usual data center, why do it in secret? We should have had the opportunity to voice our opinions before the deal was made, not after the deal was made.
I mean, I think I understand your position. I hope you understand ours. We had lawyers telling us when we could say things publicly as part of our SEC requirements. And I think we all knew that this was going to be something that we were going to have to deal with, was the sense that we should have known before this. We're here. We're trying to get the best information we have. We're trying to answer questions. We're starting a relationship. It's going to take time. And I don't expect you to believe me tonight. I just hope that over the years, you'll come to appreciate that we back up what we say.
This is probably not going to be the best comment of the night that people want to hear, but I've actually been paying attention to the financial people that speak about this project. And that got me looking into what it is that you want to do. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're actually trying to be a new model for data centers. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Going back to the question about the diesel backup. So going back to the earlier question about diesel backup, we were the first ones to go out to market and say, hey, you don't need diesel backups. And people looked at us like we had three heads because, traditionally data centers require diesel backups. That's what they needed. But, we approached it from a different perspective. Our background comes from power and generation. And we said, we don't actually think you need this. We think that you're overspending. You just don't need it. So we took that to market. It took us a while to get traction. But ultimately, we were able to sign a number of deals with some of the largest data center customers in the world. So again, that's one key example of how we're different. We don't intend to do that. It doesn't make sense from a business perspective. But that's one example.
And the residents of this community are of utmost importance. We will be residents of this community. Terawulf will be living here, and we hope that residents will be part of the Terawulf team. And it's very important to us to look after the community when it comes to pollutants, when it comes to environmental decisions. That's why we work with best-in-class partners like ERM. We want to look at it through the lens of what's the best way we can do this, and we're going to be part of this community for a long time.
Yeah, and that's why we're not speaking any special treatment across the board. We want to come in, we want to pay full freight. We want to make sure that people actually benefit from this.
Well, I appreciate the time, but one last thing that I can in Eastern Kentucky,
we've always been like the state, forgotten about.
Mhm.
But what we are tired of being next to the area in the coal mine. So we hope it's not that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Mr. Wills. Shauna McCown. Okay.
Oh,
And then Caitlin Harden.
I promise I don't want to sound repetitive, but you said you don't have a customer for sure. But at one point you were talking, you were like, our customers want us to move fast. So do you have potential customers? Can you tell us who they are? Okay. Oh.
I can tell you. So,
Just say no.
no, we do have potential customers. I can tell you it's a pretty short list. We want it to be somebody who is going to be able to stay and pay.
Yeah.
There's not that many companies that are data center customers that fit that description.
And you
So
say it's not going to be Bitcoin or
Correct.
cryptocurrency. My question is, I am involved with Kentucky People's Union, and we are out in our communities constantly knocking doors. And when we're out knocking doors, we never hear people say we need more data centers to make more, so that we can scroll more. We don't need that. I hear people saying they're having trouble with electricity and they're having trouble with food and medicine and choosing between those three. And you guys like to come in here and show off your union jobs and talk about union jobs, but we know we have been the sacrifice zone for far too long. We've been made promises. You also mentioned that you think that the trees and everything around will be like a subwoofer kind of or whatever to kind of like mute some of the sound from going out into the. Okay, please cite the peer-reviewed environmental studies from accredited universities that you have referenced to make sure that you will not impact our migratory species such as bats, butterflies, and birds.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your comments.
And I can be done. I can be done. I've got lots more, but I can be done.
So as part of the process, we'll go through and do wetland delineations, habitat assessments, find anything suitable. We'll coordinate with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, State Nature Preserves Commission. No, because we haven't done any surveys yet. But
Caitlin Harden. I'm not sure if that's Caitlin. Oh, she's leaving. Okay. Is that Caitlin? Oh, so nobody got Miss Harden not here? All right. Paula Bowling.
My first question is, are there any Kentucky Power or AEP representatives here tonight?
Yes, there are Kentucky Power, and when we conclude, you can meet them in the back right there for questions and answers, as well as anyone with the wants to talk to the tri-state building trade, so they're going to be around as well.
Okay, so this is what we were told at the meeting at the community center, that this would be a joint AEP and Terawulf symposium, for lack of a better word. So,
well, I'm not exactly sure, but we wanted this to be a Terawulf presentation,
and that's fine.
And they graciously agreed to join and are available afterwards for questions.
Okay, so I do have a question. People have concerns about sound. Are you considering a sound barrier around the facility, much like they do at the highways or whatever?
I mean, I think the answer is if it were required, we would do it.
Right. Okay.
We've
I got
seen
you.
that there's certain facilities that are in high density areas. They're not very expensive. If it's something that's required, we would do
Right.
it.
I think that would maybe go a long way to alleviating people's concerns at a probably reasonable cost. That might help with that. My other question, hold on just a second. You were talking about coal, and are you involved in any way with coal facilities here?
No.
Okay. Because, that
we don't own any generation
Oh,
their
okay.
purchase data.
All right. Well, the rest of my questions would be for AEP. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. Brandon Lavoy, if I said that right? Here he comes. And then it's Marshall Smith.
Well, this has been interesting. My name is Brandon. Brandon Lavoie, to be exact. I didn't think I was going to get asked questions. It's awesome. So, I serve as an elected soil and water conservation supervisor in Carter County. But tonight, I'm speaking for just myself, not behalf on the full board. More to come. First, I want to acknowledge something. You guys chose an old industrial site of untouched instead of untouched land. You're holding a public meeting. You're showing up to answer questions. That matters. I am not here to attack industry. Power, water, infrastructure, jobs, and technology are part of building a future. I understand you are paying for your water, paying for your power, and investing in this region. And to add to this, the $50 million to clean up the old aluminum site in Kentucky, thank you. Amen. That is beautiful. I'm here to ask for partnership. I know what organized data can do because it helps save my life. For nearly 10 years, I was told I had multiple sclerosis. My medical information was scattered across doctors, tests, imaging, reports, and separate systems. Once I gained better access to my own records through systems like MyChart, I was able to gather my information and use modern AI tools to compare what had been separated for years. That helped reveal what was really happening. I did not have multiple sclerosis. I had a structural spine problem. I was born with it. And a dangerously narrow spine. A dangerously narrow spinal canal. That information helped lead me to neurosurgery before I became paralyzed. And this is 3 months ago. Sorry, guys. Because of that, I can hold my children. I can feel my hands again. I can type, I can work, I can live. So I'm not standing here to say data centers are bad. I'm standing here because I know what happens when scattered information becomes accessible, organized, and usable. Our soil and water information is scattered too. It lives in conservation offices, old surveys, watershed reports, flood history, farm knowledge, erosion sites, abandoned land, local memory, and work people are already doing on the ground. Kentucky has people who know the land. Conservation districts are already doing the work. What we need is the ability to gather that information, store it, compare it, and diagnose problems earlier before the damage becomes permanent. So my question is this: would Terawulf consider a pilot partnership with Kentucky conservation districts that are interested to help compile soil, water, watershed, flood, erosion, cleanup, abandoned land data into usable systems so we can diagnose problems earlier and protect these resources for generations? And would you be willing to meet with local conservation leaders to explore that partnership in writing?
Brandon, first of all, thank you for the question. And the answer is we'd be happy to talk to you about this. I think you sent us a very nice email through the portal, which I read. So I'm going to give you my card, but also I think when you look at some of the tax calculations, you're going to see that the conservation districts in the various counties are going to probably see a little bump with revenue, which might be an opportunity to connect the two. So I'm happy to follow up, and I appreciate your story, and I'm glad you're with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Marshall Smith.
Where are we at?
Vicky Dunn.
So first of all, I'm late to the party. I had no idea that we had been blessed with a data center. My question is, because I'm not happy, I'm not pleased at all, and I don't want to be your neighbor. I don't want my property value to go down. And I want to know why in the hell you would plan something before you did environmental studies.
Thank you for the question. So like any project, you have to go through, various surveys, studies. We're just not at that stage yet, so we're about to.
But why would you invest millions of dollars before you find out whether it was environmentally friendly?
All right, so there's two things. One is we actually bought the project from a developer who did some initial studies. So we got an understanding in the diligence period of some of the environmental aspects of the property. It's actually one of the best we've seen in terms of there isn't a lot of wetland that we are going to disrupt.
Found out about one tonight, didn't you?
And there is also plenty of space for us to. We don't have to we don't have to do demolition of an existing facility and remove hazardous materials. A lot of our environmental is okay. If we're going to be like the smelter, we have to come up with a plan for removing the hazardous waste from the Century Aluminum plant and bringing it, to Canada and all that. So there was a lot that went into it. This was pretty straightforward, and the developer had done some initial studies. What we are building, we know very well. It's something we're building in other sites, and we know what the environmental impacts of that square footage are. And so we could apply that to the information that we had. So it's not that nothing was done in the diligence period. It's that now that there's several things we can't do until we own a property. We can't come in and drill and do geotechnical surveys and all that until we actually own it. So now that we own it, as of a few weeks ago, we're going to...
Are you at all concerned about a class action lawsuit causing you to stop and delay the projects?
No.
You should be.
Thank you.
Amanda Smith. Teresa Jackson.
First, I would like to apologize to everyone that is here. As a former school board member, I know that unless something has changed, there are at least 2 other gyms with acoustic adjustments that could have been used. I'm offended by our superintendent, our principal, and anyone on the commission that had to do with the setup of this facility. You know better. I have only heard about 20 words, clearly, if any other. I know you put up something about the power plant, and I couldn't see it, but I wasn't going to speak until about 2 hours before this meeting. So what I'm about to say will be disjointed, and you may feel like it's not pertinent to you, but it may be beneficial to you as well as to everyone in the room. I'm a little bit older, and sometimes history helps. But first, I want to ask, is it safe to say the size of one of your buildings will be at least the size of the gym? Okay. Now, what will they be built of? What is it? Cinder block?
Steel.
Steel? Okay. When I was on the board, have you ever built anything on reclaimed land before?
Yes.
Okay, so you're aware of weight and concern of weight and petrified trees, and this school itself is built on hundreds of pilings, many feet deep, to handle the weight of the building. That was just something that popped in my mind while I was sitting here. But I have a PhD in nursing education, but I also learned about economic profiles and looking at your community and the community needs during obtaining my degrees. But I'm not here about that. I'm here about the 30-some years I was married to a Kentucky Power employee. We married in 1976, before many of you were born. And at that time, we worried about, when we got home from our honeymoon, he got the job. And at that time, power plants were good for 35 years. At that time. And we didn't know, since the one plant was built in 1963, the other plant built in 1969, we didn't know if he would have a job or if the plant would be around long enough for him to retire. He was blessed in that he was able to retire from Kentucky Power, but he passed. But what I'm wanting to say is he saw the plant Unit 1, the oldest one, be retired and converted to a gas plant. I think at the time the plant was 53 years old. After a plant is converted to a gas plant, they're good for an additional 10 to 20 years. So this plant is now 63 years old. When we were young, you had Cement Solvay, you had Armco, all these different places that the plant was providing power to, and there were 2 units. There were sometimes outages. Some outages were planned, some were unexpected. There was also varying weather that put extra stress on the systems. It also required them to get additional energy from Rockport, Indiana. I don't think that happens anymore. When Unit 2 was torn down, the Mitchell plant in Morgantown, AEP, or not AEP, but Kentucky Power bought 50% of that plant, and that fills in the energy for Unit 2 that was torn down. You have that, plus you've got the gas-powered Unit 1. I know that they have purchased a peaker plant over on the Tulsa Highway. My dad was a dairy farmer, and I played in that field many a times as a young girl, but there's a peaker plant there now. That's been purchased, and another plant in Louisa. But I'm not certain what's going to happen if there's an outage or a power breaks down or something happens and we don't get the amount of energy that we need. I don't want to have to pay any higher gas bills. I don't want to have to pay any higher utility bills. I'm retired. I'm on a fixed income. The Mitchell plant was built in 1971. It takes the place of Unit 2. It was supposed to, in 21, AEP wanted to improve it, or Kentucky Power wanted to improve it, and they would not let it. It was all dealt with politics and coal-fired plants, and they wouldn't give Kentucky Power permission to improve upon it. This year and the end of last year, that changed. Our political system changed. So they're back into doing it. But you have to remember that plant was built in 1971. It seems to me like we have a lot of patchwork, just like our infrastructure with our highways and our bridges. There's a lot of patchwork that's been done, and this may put extra stress on our system. So there's some questions I would like for you all to ask AEP. Will the peaker plants that are in Tulsa Highway and Louisa, the Mitchell plant, and the Unit 1 gas power plant be enough for energy? What's going to happen when an outage occurs or there's a breakdown? Do you have a rock port to fall back on? The plants are old. Will the added energy requirements stress an old system and cause them to age out faster? Where will electric coverage come from? At what cost will that be to the regular customers? You know, West Virginia just approved, I think it was a 10% hike in their electric bills. And that, when Kentucky Power uses their energy, is that 10% brought over to us in addition to other charges. That's something that we need to know.
Ms. Jackson, do you have those in writing, the questions?
I could type it and send it to you. I just wrote this down out of my head a while ago.
Well, I'll give you my card. I mean, we can talk to AEP, but I'm happy to take those questions and ask AEP to help us with some answers on them if we can't answer them ourselves.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. I also want a question about the generators. I couldn't hear, but did they say some of them were gas powered? Or are they diesel and?
Yeah, so with respect to the generators, so we, unlike a lot of data centers that used to be built, we don't plan to build like backup one-for-one diesel generators. So we're not going to have we'll have a small amount, but far, far, far less than a traditional data center would have.
Well, here's a thought.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to have gas-powered energy for electricity,
Mm-hmm.
but I just had an experience this year where I lived in an all-electric neighborhood. Then the gas company came through, and then the gas-powered generators shut down during this extreme cold that we had this past winter. I don't want something in Texas with the big turbines and things to happen around here. And I don't want us to have to eat the cost by having to pay the higher electric bills. We do have some wonderful union workers. My husband was one, and there were times when the electric Kentucky Power couldn't get any, they would bring electrical engineers from all over the country to try to fix the things. And he would wait and he would tell me, okay, I'm going to tell him. And he said, if you will buy a steak dinner for my team, I will fix your problem. And he did. We had many steak dinners. All of his crew had steak dinners because he solved the problems. So you do have some very bright men in this area.
Thank you.
But
I agree.
We also don't want hoodwinked, and we don't want do what you want to do and then beg forgiveness. Please don't let things like that happen to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Folks, we're going to take one or two more questions. We're going to be around. It's almost 9 o'clock. We told we got to give the school back its property. But we will be here for follow-up questions. If you want to talk to us, AEP will be back there. And the building trades are around as well. Rachel Specht, if I said that right.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, so I had two questions. First of all, thank you all for being here, and thank you for coming to such a public meeting. I think we do appreciate that. In one of the articles, I think it was from May of 2026 from Terawulf, you mentioned the site at East Park that you had an initial 256 acres, but that you had additional acres for future expansion. Are you planning to expand? And if you are, how many acres?
Hi, thank you for that question. So the answer is we may. We have, there is other land available that we could purchase. We think the land that we have is adequate for the power agreements that we've signed and then some. We could buy more acreage. We may. I'm not saying one way or another. We'll make that decision at the right time. But we have enough acreage today for what we're trying to do. You know, there could be a reason why we buy it to look, you know, years and years down the road.
One example is the wetland delineation survey we have to do, and if the property we were looking at, if that's not suitable, then maybe we could, also move.
You have another site to basically look at if
It's
that's
just
not.
pretty close by.
Okay. Thank you. My next question is, so I'm sure you're probably aware of PFOAs or PFAAs, the forever chemicals. Does your company use any of those chemicals in its to treat the water or in its cooling process? And would you be willing to publish or make public the chemicals that you do use in operating your data center?
Yes, I can publish that for you.
You will?
Yes,
Okay. But do you use those chemicals?
not to my knowledge. No.
I'm not aware of it. We have somebody here who can answer that question. I'm not familiar with that, with those chemicals. I don't believe that we do, but we can confirm that for you.
They're toxic and they're highly cancerous and they're used in cooling processes. So.
Okay, if maybe you can grab our expert and we'll go to the last question.
I'm not the expert, but Mitch did mention that they use food grade, which would not have any of those chemicals in it.
But that's probably just one chemical that you use, correct? You probably use others.
Cooling, they use the food grade stuff.
But do you use other chemicals in operating?
That would be a question that we'd have to get Mitch for, yes.
All right, but you will make that public though, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And last question, and again, we will be here. Iva Daly.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me? Okay. So tonight I heard y'all speak a lot about your power plant in your data center in New York. I actually lived in Tompkins County for a while, so I'm very familiar with the area. But one detail you all didn't mention, even when you were explicitly asked about community complaints, is that environmental groups in New York currently have a lawsuit going on against Terawulf over a zoning ordinance, feeling that you misclassified what you were using the land for. And folks have explicitly stated that there's noise pollution that you all have given us so much reassurances tonight we don't have to worry about. And you may have given those folks the same reassurances. And now, despite your efforts to stop that lawsuit and have it dismissed, a judge has said it can't continue and that the folks suing have legal standing to sue. In combination with that, Terawulf has according to several news sources, operated at a loss the last several years. So that brings up a lot of concerns with what happens should things at Terawulf go south, should y'all declare bankruptcy. It also brings up some questions around trustworthiness if this is not information you were willing to share with us, even when asked about complaints. So my question's going to go very directly to a simple yes or no of what happens if things go south. Was part of your deal, did it involve a decommissioning escrow?
Can I first address the lawsuit question?
Please.
The fact of the matter, and I appreciate the question, the fact of the matter is the lawsuit is against the zoning board of Lansing. It is not against Terawulf.
Well, several articles include the zoning board as well as Terawulf.
Well, we are a party to the proceeding because we have a case before the zoning board. But what happened was we have the old coal plant in Tompkins County. We put in for a data center. We went before the planning board. We got a zoning board amendment to allow the use of a data center
by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Subsequent to that, 2 environmental groups sued the zoning board, the public body, saying that they had not followed proper procedure and had not done this legally. That is what is before the court. It is not a lawsuit against Terawulf. It is against the zoning board of Lansing.
So you weren't involved in presenting to the zoning board how?
Oh, no, we presented, we put a case before the zoning board, and then they voted to accept that we should, that we were an allowed use in the industrial zone. Since before data centers were even on the map, they didn't have it explicitly listed in their zoning. So you need to go before the zoning board to get an exception or an amendment to say this is an allowed use, and they voted to approve it. And then subsequent to that, the environmental group sued the town.
Okay.
And to be clear, there's no data center there today.
So you don't have a plant in that area?
That we're planning to, right? We're talking about Cayuga? Yeah, no, we do not have a data center there today. We plan to have a data center there. We're working through that. That's part of this.
Okay.
So there's no.
Okay. So Terawulf and the environmental groups are both suing Lansing. Okay.
I'm happy to follow up with you and answer the questions more directly from a lawyer if that would be helpful.
Could you answer the decommissioning escrow if things here?
Who's the decommissioning guy?
Yeah, can you explain?
So the decommissioning escrow, in case y'all are to go bankrupt, you'd have to set up an account in advance and have the money that in case you go bankrupt, you'd still have to be responsible for paying for the building you set up and however you set up your zone to clean all that up, and that can't be passed on. Was that asked of you as part of when y'all came here?
Yeah, no, I would say the answer is no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Look, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ivan. Folks, thank you very much for giving us your time tonight. As I said, we'll be around to answer any questions afterwards. And if we can, we'd be happy to follow up with emails if we can't answer them here today. As I said, AEP will be in the back right corner. Building trades are around. And thank you all for spending a lot of time with us tonight. Thank you very much.
Like publicly where people can hear me.